We are now live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another conversation with Moments of Motivation with Michelle. I ask you to please like, tag, or love tag and share this broadcast with your family members and friends. Share it to your page and invite everyone to come and join this conversation that we're having tonight. Tonight, we have with us none other than Mr. Ronald Hummons. Welcome to Moments of Motivation with Michelle. Ronald, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, great. We're so glad to have you and excited about the conversation that we're going to have with you. Ronald Hummons is a loving father. He's a childhood trauma activist, an award winning author, a film producer, as well as an entrepreneur. And we're so glad to be able to sit down and talk to you on Moments of Motivation with Michelle. So, thank you, Ronald, for accepting this invitation to join us.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it.
Thank you so much. All right, so Ronald, as I was preparing this message tonight, and now I understand why we were having all those technical difficulties. I was really having a difficult time even putting my questions together because as I, look at your pages, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, there's so much that you are doing. You are impacting so many different areas of your life, the community, and you're making waves. And I thank you for accepting this invitation just to have this conversation. We'll talk about a few things, but the thing that we'll talk about the most tonight is going to be your campaign for childhood trauma. So
Okay.
tell us tonight more about you. We have a lot of people on here who don't know you, and I would like to introduce them to you, but you know more about you than I do. So tell us more about Ronald Hummons. Who are you? Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, unfortunately. Born and
Really?
raised. Oh, yeah, it's time to go. Cincinnati, man. We got to put Cincinnati in that rearview mirror. Get out of here. Uh, so let's see here. Cincinnati, Ohio. Childhood trauma activist, as we've already told them. Uh, my favorite food is banana pudding, but it has to
Oh,
be my banana pudding. Yes, like my banana pudding, like probably is the best. So of course I like it, the best. And candy yams. Let's see. My favorite color is royal blue. I have an 18-year-old son, a 29-year-old daughter. Let's see. That's kind of pretty much covers
Ronald. I'm from down south. Okay, number one,
it.
I'm from
Okay.
Laurinburg, Laurel Hill, North Carolina, and I have an auntie that's probably going to be watching this in a few minutes.
Hmm.
She makes the best banana pudding in the world, so I'm pretty sure she will beg to differ that your banana pudding is the best.
I've been waiting for a challenge, so you know what? I'll have to come just to get a bowl of
You
hers.
just for a bowl of banana pudding. Yes, you got to
It'll be
come
worth
all the way to North Carolina so you can try our banana
it.
pudding. So now,
It'll be
how do
worth
you
it.
make your banana pudding? Is it baked banana pudding? What do you do? How do you make yours?
I make it on the stove. I make my own pudding.
Oh, you make your own pudding?
Yeah, like I said, I'm the dopest, so don't even don't worry. Now,
I'm
yeah,
telling.
I make my own pudding, so I start from there, and what goes into it, a little vanilla, some flour, like some of my little secret ingredients. I can't tell you, your listeners, because
Look, you don't have to
everybody,
tell us your secret ingredients. We don't want to
right?
know it, but I guarantee you, your banana pudding is not better than my aunt's banana pudding.
You know
But
what?
we'll have to
I
find
hope
out one
so.
day. You
I
have
hope
to
so
fly
because
all the way to North Carolina just to make some banana pudding.
it'll be worth it. I'll make
Yeah,
mine there in her kitchen as you make hers, and me and her can share. Set it up.
that sounds good. That sounds good. So, Ronald, you said you're a loving father. You have two kids. Tell us more about your children. I heard you say somewhere else when I talked to you, you have a child in college. Is that right?
Yes, yes. My son, he's at UC, University of Cincinnati. He made the dean's list twice. Graduated from
Congratulations.
the only black student actually graduate from one of the most prestigious schools here in one of the most prestige high schools here in Cincinnati. Graduated cum laude. So I mean, the kid is just amazing. My daughter, she's just as dope, beautiful. She had my granddaughter, my grandbaby. That's my little rabbit. Uh, Crazy about that little light skinned girl. So yeah, I mean, I have amazing children.
So you called your grandbaby a little rabbit. Does that
Yeah,
mean that she have a lot of energy?
yeah, that and just be running all over the place. Like that's my little rabbit.
Your little rabbit. Was that your only grandchild?
Yes, for now. My
Okay.
son gets married, then of course he's gonna bring some more in.
All right. All right. And I think also you was sharing your son. Does he box or something like that?
Yeah, he boxes for UC.
All
So,
right.
he's undefeated. He's man, got brains, got the hands. Like, I mean, he's a full package.
Did he get
Handsome
that
looking
from his
dude.
dad?
I'm a sweet gentle butterfly, so I mean, maybe from his mom, but I'm just a sweet gentle guy.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Ronald, would like to find out more about how you got started writing books.
How I got started writing books. It was actually when
So we are having a few technical issues here.
okay.
And Ronald, I don't see you. If you can hear me,
I
come back on
can.
screen.
What I don't know what to do. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
All right, you guys. We have Ronald Hummons with us tonight. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's an author, a childhood trauma activist. He's an entrepreneur. He's doing a lot of things in Cincinnati as it relates to childhood trauma. And all right, there we go, Ronald. And you got knocked off of there, and I want you to start back where you were talking about your son boxing. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties there.
Yeah, so he boxes for UC. He's undefeated. So with him fighting collegiate, he fights against the Air Force, the Army, other colleges, and these guys, man, they come into Cincinnati or we travel to go see them, but it's usually a defeat for them. So it's kind of a waste of time for us because it's like, go do what you're gonna do. Let's go
All
home.
right. I got you. I got you. So I have read your book Diamond, and I have it right here. I haven't read all of it. Let me back up. I haven't read all of it. And most definitely interested in finding out, more about Diamond, the young man that you're talking about in this book, and how does he relate to the man that's sitting across the screen from me right now?
Oh man, well Diamond. So Diamond was actually so imagine a movie, right? And you have your different actors. Diamond was a character in my movie of life, right? Because as a kid, man, I was like really small and scrawny and nappy hair and wasn't popular. So I was teased a lot and I was bullied a lot. But then to take it further, with my father being a crackhead, we slept in abandoned houses. So I wasn't one of the popular kids, man, that people like, right? And on top of that, like really, I wasn't this tough kid. You know, the hood wasn't a good space for me. It wasn't a safe space for me. So, but this was what I had. This was my life. So I decided, you know what? I need to create an image, a character that can fit in. So that's really kind of how I spent most of my life, right? Trying to fit in because like I said, that wasn't a space that was safe for me. And of course, you understand childhood trauma. Safety is what most is it's implanted into our system, into our DNA to want safety. So for me, Diamond was safe, right? Because Diamond was everything that Ronald wasn't. Well, at least the character Diamond. So when you
Right.
think about diamonds, right? Diamonds are beautiful, they're tough, they're valuable. And guess what? Ronald did not feel valuable at all. I definitely wasn't tough. And I was an ugly duckling, at least what I let everybody else make me think, right? So when I chose this image, I wanted to become everything that this image described. So, I did, back when we were kids, I did the S curl, right? So I can have what they call good hair. Um, and then all of a sudden, I started kind of, taking on this character, right? So as I started taking on a character, I had to create personalities to go with this character. And that was difficult because I'm in the hood. And how do you create personalities that know how to fight? So I got my ass whooped a lot, uh, and got beat up like viciously a lot until I started learning how to defend myself. And that came from adding more parts to this character, right? Because I got beat, by my adoptive father so much. And then in the streets, taking the way that I did, I had to learn how to be tough. So the way I learned how to be tough was I gained a temper. I created a temper that helped me to be mad, right? So, you get to talking shit, and on the inside, I'm terrified, but I'm boiling in my head, trying to make myself boil over, angry, right? And it worked because now I started whooping the guys, and I became this tough guy. Um, Diamond also had to take on the other roles, right, of living in the hood. Drug dealer. I became a drug dealer, and I was really good at it. I trafficked coke from Indianapolis to Brooklyn to Canton, Ohio. We pretty much did it all. So this was the story of Diamond, and it was when I went to prison that I went to the library, right? So I'm in the library and I see a book, and it's a name definition book, and I'm like, I passed it up, right? Because nobody want to read that in the penitentiary. But something told me to go get that book, so I did. And then when I took it back to my cell, I opened it up, and it said, and I wanted to know what Ronald meant because I hated Ronald, right? See, I had so much self-hatred to Ronald that I didn't want the name, nothing to do with it, because everybody hated Ronald. You know what I'm saying? My biological father, when I ended up meeting him, I wasn't like him. I didn't talk like him, right? I didn't talk hood like that. So he hated me. So he tried to make sure that he changed that image. The self-hatred from moms and from everybody else. So naturally, I hated myself. Uh, so yes, like I said, I took this book back to my cell, and when I looked at the name Ronald and looked at the definition, that's when my life started to change. Like that's when my healing started, right?
So what
Because
does the name Ronald mean?
it means king, mighty ruler / counselor. And I was like, wow, that's deep. Like I'm so busy hating it, not even knowing that this name meant king. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I always believe, like, when I used to be into the Bible during my Bible days, I always believed in name definitions and how they usually fit a person's purpose. So when I seen that, I was like, damn, I ain't supposed to be in here. I'm a king. So literally I started, working on what it looked like in my future, things that I was going to do when I came home, people that I was going to cut off, you know what I'm saying? Like, and just really changing my life around because I wanted my life to identify now who I was, the identity of Ronald.
So Ronald, you talked about you as a little boy, this image, the experience that you've had. I know that in time, talking to you and also reading some of your material, as a young man, you experienced your own childhood trauma. Can we talk about that?
Man, I mean, it goes all the way back to the womb.
You don't have to talk about all of it, just a little bit. So when we go into the area of you becoming this great activist that you are, the people will understand, what gives you this drive, what motivates you, because there was a bright light one day that shined upon you, or you had this awakening moment that has driven you to the point that you are spending the rest of your life as an activist for childhood trauma. So tell us about your experience with trauma.
Um, so my experience, it was really excessive. The abuse from my adoptive father, like I said, the homelessness and all the experiences with my biological father as well. I did my first robbery with my biological father that left a man dead, not by my hands, but by his hands. And I had to support his drug abuse by doing robberies with him. Um, so yeah, so fast forward, like I said, the prison, but it was there that's when my healing process started. So when I came home, you know, um, I knew that I didn't want to be a part of the street world anymore, and I just cut off, a lot of people, right? And I was homeless, but every day I would go to the library and study books on how to write business plans because I'm like, I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur. There was nothing you can tell me about that. And look, within 2 years, I did. I became an entrepreneur. My clothing line was the first business that I launched. So I did international manufacturing. I traveled the world, China, Africa, Bangkok, Thailand, all of the stuff, right? And I produced films, when I came home, and I'm out in magazines, and I'm thinking like, man, my life is great. Now I'm in a place where I was actually getting ready to launch my $1 million baby. So my $1 million baby was my energy drink. I own an energy drink called Jetty Juice. It's a aphrodisiac energy drink, right? So I've coined the phrase aphrodisiac. So of course, it turns you on, gets you, really excited or whatever, and give you a little energy to, take it a little further. I just signed a deal with GNC, and it was huge. It was going to make me rich. This was going to be my $1 million baby. So while I'm in a meeting with my sales rep, and we were discussing, putting everything together to get things on the shelf, I get a phone call. It was my daughter, and she tells me that her brother, that my son, has just got shot by the police.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Like, not my son. Like, how did he, even get into the predicament? So I called his aunt, and she's screaming on the phone, "Get out here quick!" They load him up on the ambulance. So and I remember to this day, I was sitting there in my meeting, and this was 6 years ago, and I'm sipping on a extra sweet caramel macchiato from Starbucks, stirred, and I'm thinking life is just great right now. Now I'm rushing to go see my son get loaded, his body get loaded up. Uh, so when I get there, I still didn't have all the information. So now I'm trying to figure out, man, what's going on. I learned that he committed suicide by cop, meaning he's waving a gun and he's yelling, uh, kill me, right? So, of course, they killed him, they shot him and killed him. So it was, we okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, so anyway, so like I said, so they took him to the hospital, and that's where he died, in the hospital. The thing is, though, while he's trying to get the cop to shoot him, he's waving a gun and he's firing some shots. And unfortunately, he hit a cop while he's yelling, "Kill me, kill me."
Mm-hmm.
One bullet killed that cop as well. So it was just a tragic event all the way around. But after his death, I needed people to understand, because I still didn't know what childhood trauma was yet, right? I mean, I knew it from just a term, trauma. Everybody talks the word trauma, but I didn't really
Right,
know what it
right.
was. And so after his death, I wrote some articles because I needed people to understand that what happened. That I'm not trying to justify how he committed suicide, but I needed people to understand the scenarios that led up to it, right? Because you can't talk about what happened on June 19th without telling circumstances that led up to it, right? So I talked about how I filed for custody for him twice, at 9 and at 14. I talked about his mom and her previous, her childhood as well, which was very traumatic, but she chose to go down the route that I didn't. She chose to get on drugs and to get active in this really wild behavior. Whereas I lived in the hood, and my father was on all type of drugs. But because of that, I chose not to. So I didn't smoke weed or anything, right? I was like that cornball in the hood. Um, so, I had all these child protective service cases on. I filed for custody for him twice, and I'm trying to help people understand that this was a result of the experiences that he went through. And people didn't really take to it too well, because I started receiving death threats in my inbox. The Cincinnati police, they started threatening me. So I've been beat up by the police, had my mouth busted and bloody, arrested and thrown in jail. I was put into a cell, confined to a cell for 2 days with no toilet paper. I had to take my own shirt off and rip and wet it just to use the bathroom. So I went through a lot of retaliation. I went through hell. But the thing was, what I learned was that my son's issue, it wasn't isolated just to him. You know what I'm saying? This was a massive issue that nobody was addressing, and that
And
bothered
s-
me.
and so if I can interrupt, Ronald, so we're talking about childhood trauma. And it's important to help our audience understand, as you said, we hear about trauma all the time, but we don't hear about childhood trauma all the time, being specific childhood trauma. So what would you define as childhood trauma? because I understand that no matter what experience any of us have, we may have the same type of experiences, but those experiences don't impact both of us the same way. So, how do you define childhood trauma?
So, of course, clinically, it's a series of adverse experiences, right? So, like you said, we don't necessarily all, respond to these experiences the same. Some of us are in a position where we have more capacity biologically, right? To where we have more capacity to safety. So when you really start to understand childhood trauma, excuse me, it's more of a biological issue. So it's definitely psychological as well, but it's more of a biological issue because the trauma lives in our body. There's a book called, Keeping the Score, or the body keeps the score. Um, and when you start to understand that and understand the response to childhood trauma is a response in our nervous system. So of course, that's where they got the term, the fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Right.
So, like I said, when that part was the real impact, because when I learned that childhood trauma was biological, and I was like, wow, like that was deep, right? Because everybody's talking about mental health, mental health. Let's put
Right.
money in mental health. But yet childhood trauma is not mental health. Like they're not the same.
So, what are some examples? Because we all have had, again, some type of traumatic experience. What are some samples or examples of childhood trauma?
Well, sexual abuse,
Hmm.
physical abuse, emotional abuse, abandonment. I mean, it can come in many forms. Um, it can come as very minimal as maybe an abandonment, and the person that went through physical abuse, and so many, the trauma, neglect, and everything else, right? Their experience, the person that went through the minimum could have a worse experience physically than that person that actually went through the physical abuse. Because I mean, especially abandonment issues, they cut so deep,
Right.
and that's when you start dealing with the insecurity and so many different issues that come out of that, right? So yeah, it's like I said, man, it's about that person's response to it.
I also read that, say, for instance, you and I as children can be having this conversation, and I'm telling you about this traumatic stuff, these experiences that I've either experiencing, witnessing, or even causing myself. And because of my, how I receive it, as you said, psychologically, although I did not physically go through that experience, it could also have a traumatic impact on my life just based on what I'm hearing. So
Mhm.
I thought that that was very important to make sure that I bring that out tonight as well, for our viewers. Childhood trauma, as Ronald is saying, it goes deep. And at some point of all of our lives, we've either experienced it, we've witnessed it, we've heard about it, or we've just seen it. So, Ronald Hummons, our guest tonight, he's a childhood trauma activist, and he's doing all that he can. He has a team of people working with him. They are fighting to bring awareness to childhood trauma. He's going to talk more about that as he has this initiative to bring awareness. State of emergency on childhood trauma. A lot of times we hear when there's a natural disaster, our governors, they declare a state of emergency. So Ronald is saying, hey, because of the impact of childhood trauma on our lives and what we're seeing in so many social ills, childhood trauma is the root of that. So let's have that discussion surrounding that.
Yeah, well, like you said, so when people ask me, and I get to ask this question all the time, all around the country, why are you calling it a state of emergency?
Right.
And that's when, of course, I go into the biological effect of it, right? And then I help them understand. I said, so if childhood trauma is biological, then and it lives in our body, that would make it nature, right? So I said, so if it's nature and you understand your body and your mechanics to be natural, then childhood trauma would be deemed as the worst natural disaster known to man. So if that's the case, then we should be declaring a state of emergency on it. So, like you said too, and I always give this example. If the worst storm and flood follow and totally destroy the community, the first thing that the mayor or the governor is going to do is declare a state of emergency.
Right.
High fatality rates, mass infrastructure. They're going to declare a state of emergency. Why? Because there's federal dollars to fix it. So now that we understand what childhood trauma is from a biological perspective, now we understand the damage that is done. We need to declare a state of emergency so that those dollars can fix it.
So when you say so the dollars can fix it, so what are some of the things that you and your team are proposing that should be done or could be done as it relates to childhood trauma?
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, I have a really dope team, right, of therapists, educators, principals, um, and people that understand the somatic experience, even more of the trauma, right? So we're on the state level. We already have legislation on the state level that's in the health committee. So we're pushing it on the state level, but we also brought it back down here to a local level. And we have a full implementation plan. So it's not just declared and then we're just making a lot of noise with it. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? We actually have an implementation plan that actually heals childhood trauma, right? So to give you some ideas of what this plan looks like I said, most people don't even know what childhood trauma is. So there's a huge awareness campaign that comes with it. But it's just not your basic awareness campaign. Everybody's running around talking about awareness of violence, awareness of guns. No, we don't need information overload. We need to understand exactly what it is. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to create a series of commercials. Uh, One commercial we actually were talking about today with the production team is, it'll come on with that veteran, right? Basically trying to make that connection because people, they don't understand that for one, children can have PTSD.
Right.
So it'll come on with that veteran and then all of a sudden it'll switch to a child. Like, did you know children up as young as 9 years old can experience, and then talk about, so like I said, because we need people to understand, right? It'll be somewhere, a couple that I actually counsel. And, the gentleman was telling me, my wife, she just doesn't want to listen to anything. She just goes against everything. She's always fighting against me. And I'm just trying to just love on her, give her some good advice. So I said, okay, so now I go to her and I'm asking her about her earliest experience in childhood, right? She tells me that as a child, her mother got remarried, and her stepdad was abusive, controlling, and all this stuff, right? Trying to make her wash the dishes. And she always fought back and fought him. So now I needed to explain to her the brain, body, and nervous system connection and what that looks like. So when I broke that down to her, and I helped her understand that, when you're exposed to that excessive trauma like that, your nervous system gets stuck in one of these modes, right? And it's only to protect you. At least it's thinking it's protecting you, right? Because the nervous system is not rational, right? The nervous system, man, is very complex, but it has no intellect. So now that she understands that piece, and also needed to help her understand that frontal cortex, the part of your brain that you use for rational thinking, the part that your husband is using, that part shuts down, and your nervous system becomes the brain. So going through all of that, so now then I asked her, I said, so when he talks to you, who are you hearing? She started busting out in tears, right? So when she got herself together, I asked her, I said, so tell me how you processing this. And she told me, she says, you know what? I'm sad because, it wasn't her husband or fiance. She said, my husband is a really good man. Um, and for real, and I've just been really resistant against him. But she said, I'm also empowered. So I wanted to know, empowered about what, right? Help me understand this so I can help other people. She says, I'm empowered because I know now that, because I've been like this my whole life. So she said to her, this was normal, just like most of us, right? So like most of us, it's normal because we've taken on the experiences of trauma as is our normalcy. We've taken the chaos, the murder, the poverty, we've taken all of this on to be our normalcy, but it's not. So
It's
now
not.
she
Right.
understands now that not only is it not normal, but also understands that there's a cure. That right there was empowering to her. She also understood too that it was labeled. You know what I'm saying? That there was an actual diagnosis for this. So it wasn't just something where it's just a reaction. So like I said, so they came back, 90 days later, and she told me, like, man, you've changed our life because now when I do fall back into that mode, I now that I'm aware of it, I catch myself. And I do the tapping and other tools that I taught her to help get her system back regulated. So like I said, so some of the commercials would be, centered around that. So like I said, the first part of this is the awareness campaign. And then we bring in the piece where we want to train educators, we want to train principals, we want to train resource officers, and on the brain, body, and nervous system connection, because they need to know. Social workers don't even know this experience, right? And so now they understand so this is the thing. We have educators, police officers, principals. They're dealing with children in their survival mode. They're dealing with children in their own trauma, right? That they
Right.
don't even
Right.
understand. in their dysregulated nervous system. So now, you got a hurricane going on here. So we want to actually educate them, bring in this whole system into the schools. We want to create processing rooms in all the schools, right? Because we don't understand that trauma, it either metabolizes or stays in our body. So we actually want to create processing rooms and then train them on how to bring these children into these processing rooms. So I mean, we have an entire, very comprehensive plan, right? From the nutrition, we actually deal with how to actually heal it, not manage it.
Right. So what do you have in place for those adults? Like you said, the principals, the school teachers, the counselors who may have experienced trauma themselves. What do you have in place to help them heal? Because one of my other questions was, going to be to you, because a lot of times men who may have experienced trauma, they keep it to themselves, they don't say anything, and eventually it manifests itself in other ways. So how, what do you have available to help the adults heal?
So one of the things that we offer too in the legislation is a grant, a huge grant. We actually plan on starting off with a $500,000 grant, where, because all therapy is not good therapy, because a lot of therapists don't even understand the brain, body, and nervous system connection. So they can't really help you heal from trauma when they don't understand that part. So what we want to do is, like I said, we created a $500,000 grant, and we're also creating a database. This database will have the therapists that are approved, for this funding, right? These therapists actually, they do EMDR therapy, right? So I've been doing EMDR for over a year now. And the EMDR is like literally the next level when it comes to healing trauma. So like I said, so we want to provide the funding for them to actually get the trauma healing that they need. So that's the start of, as far as in our legislation, is getting them to a place, man, to where they can somatically heal and actually deal with their issues.
Okay, that's good. So Ronald, you threw out what EMDR. Some of our viewers may not know what that means. So if you can help us to understand what that means, because some parents who may have children who are going through childhood trauma right now, and they're trying to figure out what type of therapy. Is it CBT they need, RBT they need? And then you just said EMDR, whatever. So could you please explain that to us and what that means?
Yeah, well, for one, we don't necessarily push the cognitive behavior therapy. And the reason why I say it is because, so think about it. So if trauma lives in our body, right? If it's in our nervous system, then we're not going to function. We don't have the tools up here yet to actually deal with this. So, doing it from a cognitive place is going to be really ineffective, right? At least this is how, me and my team, how we view it, right? So we want to focus on the body, because that's where the experience starts. That's what receives the trauma. That's what understands the trauma and stores the trauma. So that's why, like I said, see, definitely do not do. I do not support cognitive behavior at all, because, like I said, we can't start up here when it's here first.
Okay. Okay.
Because, and once again, like I talked about, how this part shuts down as the body is experiencing these unsafe, scenarios that we go through, that may not always be a threat, right? But because our body has been exposed to so much trauma, and our nervous system is so dysregulated, so that's why I said that there's no way that I can function cognitively if I don't heal this part first. So EMDR is rapid eye movement therapy, right? So to give you an example, so I sit there, and it's this long light that goes back and forth. So the first thing that my therapist will do, and this is kind of how I learned a little bit of therapy for some couples, she'll ask, tell me the first memory that you realize that you understand that was painful from your childhood. So, but then she'll make a series, right? You'll go, down the line. Okay, at this age, now, between the age of 5 and 10, tell me some painful experiences from 10 to 15. You know what I'm saying? So she'll literally get a whole series. So that's why mine has been so long. Like I said, I've been doing it for a year and a half. So starting off with that abuse, from the biological father, right? And once you track that memory, then that's when she'll start the lighting. You put these headphones on, and it's a ticking sound that goes from ear to ear, right? So this actually is positioning the brain for the body to be able to start releasing this trauma, so that wherever that trauma is located at, it'll actually start metabolism. It'll start metabolizing and processing through your body. So it actually heals your body from the trauma. And what that looks like is, just to take it even further, it's healing your nervous system. That's what healing childhood trauma looks like. is healing your nervous system, because until that's done, until that's regulated, that's why I said cognitively, we won't be able to function anyway. Because every time we get into those unsafe experiences, then we're going to result back to, the fight, flight, or freeze.
Okay. So is therapy the only way to help those individuals who have experienced some childhood trauma? Is there music, art, equine? Is there any other things? I think you did say about something about nutrition, and that is very, very important.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, I mean, there's many other areas that you can go and use, other tools you can use. But okay, how can I explain this? So, like I said, childhood trauma itself is very complex. So, if you don't really understand how to use these tools, so that's why therapy, is so important, right? Or, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be going into therapy. It can be YouTube videos. Just get an awareness of what's going on in your body. That's the main point, right? Because if you don't understand that, then you can listen to music all day long. It can relax you. But once again, you get into those unsafe scenarios and your nervous system is going to go back into that fight, flight, freeze, because that's what it knows, right? So you have to understand what's going on there first. And like I said, and the experience of childhood trauma, the biological effect of it. Once you understand that, then yeah, you can use a number of tools. Like with my with my clients that I counsel, and with the tapping, right? There's different tapping things you can do, things that you can do that actually help bring your nervous system back down. But once again, like I said, if you don't understand the experience that your nervous system is having, and it's going to be a waste of time.
Okay. Okay. So, what is the message that you want to drive home for those individuals who may be interested in supporting you as you are going towards, going to the local and the state level for the state of emergency on childhood trauma?
So what we're trying to do is, so I took this model from the state of emergency on opioids, just to let all your viewers know, right? And I just revised it. For me, that was a successful model. And one of the things they did was they declared it in multiple states. And then, of course, they took it to a federal level. That's our goal. Our goal is to get it done in multiple states. So we already have a chapter in California. We have a chapter in Louisiana. We're developing with you and your team a chapter there in North Carolina. So like I said, the goal is to get it done and declared in multiple states. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a state level though. Like, once again, like I said, I brought it down to a local level, and we're actually looking like it'll be done by May 2nd. So May, of course, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's kind of the aesthetics of it. Why I said, I told them May. So yeah, so like I said, so the goal is to get it done in multiple states or cities. And once we get at least 3 or 4, then we're going to DC to push forward to get on the federal level. Once it's done on the federal level, our goal is to go to the UN to get it done globally, right? Because I mean, this is the biggest epidemic that we've ever seen. Childhood trauma is the biggest epidemic in the world, right? I mean, because think about our last president. He's not just nuts just because because he's a fool. He went through a lot of issues, and he talks about it in his book about, his father, and, because all that wealth and the abandonment, stuff like that. So, and it doesn't justify anything that he's done. I just want to help people understand the trauma part of it, right? The experience that played, because that's all we're doing. We're just expressing our trauma. But of course, it get judged as everything else, and our African American boys and girls too. But I see, more in young men like my son, that's deceased. When their trauma expresses itself, then they get the narratives of, bad behavior, he's evil, all of these negative narratives. But it's like, wait a minute, he's just expressing, or she's just expressing their trauma. So why aren't we focusing on that? So like I
So
said,
is that focus, meaning focusing on how to bring those behaviors under control instead of expressing themselves in a negative manner, like gun violence. Gun violence is on a rampant right now. A lot of young people, in my hometown, they're killing one another. So what do you do? How does that discussion start?
you got to think about, for one, what's driving them to the guns? Because like I tell people all the time, we can get rid of all the guns, right? No guns exist in the world. But guess what? We're talking about dysregulated nervous systems that doesn't understand what a gun is. It
Mm-hmm.
understands safety, but it doesn't understand it in a way of in a healthy way, right? So guess what? It's going to sharpen up the spoon. And I just told some legislators this a couple of months ago. I told them about my experience right in prison, and I said, I mean, think about it. I was in the penitentiary. We didn't have guns in there, but guess what? I seen my homies, man, dying like every week. So I said, so how do you explain that? If there's no guns in the penitentiary, how is the death rate so high there? And there's no guns.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why, like I said, it wouldn't make a difference. And see, and that right there, what you just said about the gun awareness of what's going on in your city, that's where people get distracted at. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I feel like it's an intentional distraction. And what I mean by that is by our legislators, because they have enough information. They know, you know what, let's keep people focused on, the guns. Let's keep them focused on the gun violence. Let's keep focusing, keep them marching and out here, man, making a lot of noise about the police. Because they know, guess what? If we heal our trauma, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be less conflict with the police. That makes sense. So it's
That
like we
makes
put all
sense.
these resources, to Black Lives Matter, when it's like, wait a minute, hold on. If we put more, if we put the same resources in healing our trauma, then George Floyd wouldn't have been there in that position because he would have been probably at a job somewhere, a corporate job. There's no telling what this brother would have been doing, open up his own gym as big as he was. And I'm just saying, just, literally, right? So think about this, because his friends talked about, his younger experience and the trauma he experienced. And guess what? He was a drug addict. So guess what? If the trauma was healed, then there would be no addiction. If there was no addiction, there would be no need to try to spend a $20 bill. So, and it doesn't justify what the police did. This is one of the things I try to help people understand all the time. It's not about justifying the police. It's about understanding what led to that scenario, what created that scenario that put us in front of racist cops to begin with. Because we won't ever train the racism out of police. So since we'll never get anywhere with that movement, like that'll never happen. This country created police for us. So we'll never change that. So why not focus on healing what's put us in a position a lot of times to create the conflict, right?
Okay.
Same way with guns.
I got a couple of questions for you from a couple of viewers. Okay.
Okay.
One question says, if you're not using all forms of therapy, then how does your program meet the need of those that experience trauma in various ways?
When they say all forms of therapy, I'm not understanding what they mean.
Okay. If you're not using all form, when you were saying that you don't use the CBT or the RBT and you
Oh, you're talking about,
recommend,
okay. But
yes.
yeah, well, I mean, I thought I explained that. I mean, you have to start in the body first. You can't go into therapy trying to fix this up here when the trauma is here. So I don't know if that helps explain it any, but like I said, cognitive behavior therapy, it literally is that. It's cognitive, right? So when you understand what cognitive is, you understand that it's starting from the roof when you need to come down here and deal with the foundation. Did that help
Okay.
explain it?
The other question is, yes. Okay. So you explained that. The other question is, how is childhood trauma determined? How is disguided nervous systems determined? What assessments are used? What methods based research speaks to identifying the trauma? So the
So there's
first
a
one is,
thing.
how is childhood trauma determined?
Well, there's what's called a ACEs score. So you can go online and actually take the ACEs test. And it's ACE. So the ACEs test, basically, you just go Google ACE apostrophe S, right? ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences is what it stands for. So when you take the test, it's going to ask you a series of questions, and according to the score from these questions, then it'll tell you what your score is. It could be a 1, it could be a 10. My case actually was a 10. It'll ask you different experiences. Have you ever experienced, sexual violation? It'll ask you, the abuse, the abandonment. It'll actually ask you as many questions as it can to help you to identify what your score is on child trauma.
Okay. Then the second question is, how is dysregulated nervous systems determined?
How are they determined?
Yes.
They are determined by your behavior. That's pretty much the best way that I could explain that.
Okay.
Like I said, we've come to a place that so much is it's our normalcy. The chaos is our normalcy that we deal with in our communities that we don't even
Right.
recognize it as dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I mean they will have to really look at as far as according to their own behavior. And also, once again, like I said, therapy, but the right
Right.
therapy. Because the therapist that understands cognitive behavior is really not going to understand, the inner body workings, the brain, body, and nervous
Unless
system.
he or she has been trained for both. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So,
yeah, well, that's right.
what are some of the assessments used to assess a person or diagnose a person with childhood trauma?
I'm not a therapist, so I couldn't say.
Okay, so that's basically probably using basic clinical assessments, diagnostic assessments, and even a psychological assessment to do so for those individuals who may be, asking that question. So,
Yeah.
what method-based research approaches or speaks to identifying the trauma? So that's one of the final question that was asked. What method-based research speaks to identifying the trauma?
With method based research.
Research, yeah.
I don't think I'm understanding the question. I mean, I couldn't. Yeah,
That's
I
that's a
mean,
question. If you can't answer the question right now, that's fine. We can just move on. But we're
yeah, I don't
most
think I'm really
definitely
understanding.
interested in you know again talking to the audience tonight about what you are doing in Cincinnati as it relates to your fight um, for childhood trauma, bringing awareness to childhood trauma, not just in Cincinnati, not just in my state or city, but all over the world. It's a global pandemic, as you were saying, epidemic, excuse me, as you were saying, and it impacts all of us directly as well as indirectly. So
Okay.
individuals who may be interested in, knowing more about you and also obtaining some of your materials, your books, could you please share with them where they can get that information from?
They can go to www.ohiostateofemergency.com, or they can go on my Facebook page, Ronald Hummons. It's Hummons. Send me friend request. They can follow me on Instagram. It's Ronald A. Hummons underscore official.
Okay. And also, before we go, Ronald, there was, you guys did, have some success. I think it was last week, as you went before the legislators. Would you like to share that with the viewers tonight?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we went before our vice mayor last week, and she was overly impressed. So we actually have our second meeting this Friday coming up, and to have meetings back to back like that pretty much tells you, at least tells us that we're going to move forward. So our next meeting is Friday, and that's where we're going to give her a summary rollout. Right? We want to show her. We want to show step by step. We don't want there to be any holes or them trying to figure out anything because, of course, we know legislators sometimes can be a little, well, we ain't gonna go there, but yeah, but they can, be a little not always too sharp. That's the best word to use. So we want to show them this summary rollout and help them understand that May 2nd is when we want them to declare the state of emergency because it is in May and Mental Health Awareness Month. We're going to have a series of commercials ready to go. So, like I said, so it's perfect, for us because it allows us to be able to do this, man, in sections. Because once that's done in July, then that's when we're going to start the training part, right? We're actually going to start training the educators and the principals and everybody, right? The thing is, though, so in June, and so there's what mental health awareness month, there's cancer awareness month, there's awareness month for everything, right? Except for childhood trauma. So
Childhood
we're going to
trauma.
push, yes. So we're going to push for June, this for Cincinnati to be the first city ever to declare childhood trauma awareness month in the month of June. And once again, that's also for the aesthetics, right? Because a lot happened in June, like the death of my son. So declaring June to be a state of emergency on childhood trauma is like so dope and it's huge. So yeah, so I mean, so literally, so we're creating a model, we're creating the blueprint here in Cincinnati to actually deal with the issue for the rest of the country.
Okay, there you guys have it. Ronald Hummons, childhood trauma activist, author, entrepreneur, writer, film director. He's sitting here before us tonight. He's doing such a great job in Cincinnati, bringing awareness to childhood trauma. If you want more information about him and what he's doing, and also Ronald, if there are individuals who say, "Well, I can't get to Cincinnati, but I want to support you," what are some of the ways that our viewers can support you and support what you're doing?
Man, they can call their local legislators and direct them our way. Show
That's
them the
it.
blueprint. Show them the blueprint. The blueprint that we're creating. I can't even talk tonight.
No, you're doing a great job. And also, before you go, Ronald, I would like to congratulate those individuals who registered early so that they could get, register for a free book, Diamond.
Okay.
And here it is, you guys. Great book, great read. Um, he shared a lot of information that was in his book tonight, not as much as is that is in this book because there's a lot. So I would like to congratulate Miss Shirley Green. She is in Louisiana. She registered early. Miss Annie Blue, she is from Lawrenceburg, North Carolina. She registered early. Miss Dorothy McFall, she registered early. And there's some other individuals who might have registered, but we did not see their information. And we're going to go back on the emails and we will make sure that we acknowledge you and also make sure that you receive your book, Diamond by Ronald Hummons. I really enjoyed this interview with you tonight as much as I do our conversations. You're a very intelligent young man. You've had so many life experiences. Your life has radically turned around. Also, we did not talk as much about your clothing line, but he does have a clothing line, and people buying his stuff up, And just again, Ronald, congratulations, and
Thank you.
and keep doing what you're doing. And I'm hoping and praying that those of us here from North Carolina who've heard your story and heard what you're doing will get on the bandwagon to do all we can to support you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right. You are so welcome. And you have a wonderful night. And thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to like, tag, and share this broadcast so that other people can, have an opportunity to hear this conversation with Ronald Hummons. We will see you all on next Monday when we sit down with a young lady who um, was a mental health client. She went into a program, and absolutely, the program actually was a program that I run. She came into our program. She ended up getting out of our program. She went to school, got a 4-year degree. She has written a book and has graduated from college and is doing well. So she's gonna come and talk to us about what she's doing. Yes, she deserves a hand clap for that. Whatever we've experienced, whatever trauma we've experienced, and I like the fact that Ronald was talking about how we can be healed. We can be healed. We can be healed by the hand of God if that's what we believe in. Whatever we believe in, we can be healed and brought back to a place of wholeness and wellness. So, again, thank you, Ronald. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.